Guys, this is Lala Legacy and welcome back to another episode of Seabed. So, last episode we had unlocked Tips 2 second trip at the end of the second trip. So, let's see it. Wake up! It looks incredible outside! Feeling like someone was calling out to me, I opened my eyes. The seats of the bus trembled as the driver skillfully navigated through the crooked country road. I had finally managed to fall asleep just earlier, but I didn't feel like I could repeat the feat again. Regaining myself to that fate, I instead resigning myself to that fate, I instead looked out the window. There was no point to even confirm that the seat next to me had been unoccupied. The voice that woke me up came from a distant memory. A friend that used to be by my side was no longer there. I said that, but it wasn't like she had passed away or anything. It was just one day she forgot all her memories about me. She probably did it consciously too. I still couldn't understand the reason why. We had known each other since we were little. She had always been a little strange, but I simply couldn't imagine her ending up like that, given her personality. The bus finally reached a mountain path. Looking out the window, I started spotting patches of snow as we drove uphill. The amount of snow increased the higher we went. By the time my ears started ringing from the pressure difference between the lowlands and the mountain, the snow walls around the road had exceeded the bus's height. I remember my friend saying how the sight reminded her of Moses in the Red Sea. The tour conductor stood up from her seat and began talking about our trip. Basically, we could do whatever we wanted as long as we returned to the bus on time. She then began explaining the two alternate courses the passengers were free to choose from, one for beginners, another for the more experienced. The bus stopped almost at the same time as her explanation ended. The tour guide reminded us of the departure time one more time before the bus doors opened. The passengers scattered, each of them going in their chosen direction. Reminiscing about the last time I'd been here, I turned 360 degrees to take in the snowy panorama surrounding me. The sky was clear and blue above the white mountains, just like back then. "Hey, so where do we go for a beginner's course?" she asked me. "Weren't you listening?" "Well, I wasn't. I thought you would know anyway." "I guess we both got a bit overly excited by the snow," I deflected. "Oh, well then, let's follow where everyone's going." I didn't want to panic over small details like this, and she wasn't the type to complain about them either. We found the longest train of people nearby and mixed in with them, eventually entering a relatively small wooden structure. Inside, we found a souvenir store and a cable car station. We observed a line of tourists buying tickets for the cable car. We did the same and lined up behind them. From a closer look, I realized it was a trolley bus, not a cable car. I checked the faces of people around us as we waited. I hadn't memorized the faces of our tour mates, but I was pretty sure I'd never seen these people before. Seemed like we had mixed in with an entirely different group. She was looking around as well, probably thinking the same thing. "I've never ridden a trolley bus before," she said. "Me neither." It seemed like she had grown a little worried. Looks like it's going through a tunnel, I said. She replied. Once the trolley bus had parked next to us, we boarded it with the rest of the tourists. The seat at the front was open, so I sat down there. We had the same spot back then, too. The same speedometer caught my eyes as back then. The tunnel I could see through the front window was dark and narrow. Being in a bus racing through the tunnel at a relatively high speed was quite thrilling. Back then, I didn't really have time to enjoy it, though. We were looking at the trolley bus timetable to confirm whether we could get back to our bus in time. But we weren't sure what to do or how long it would take, so we couldn't even make an educated guess. The trolley bus stopped. We arrived at a place that looked a lot like the wooden structure we'd left. with an almost identical souvenir shop and bus station. Relying on my old memories, I left the souvenir store and ascended the concrete stairs. I opened the door at the top of the stairs and entered a lookout area. A dark mountain range extended in front of me in the distance. The lookout was built at an angle that allowed a full view of the mountains, provided the weather was clear. Layers of snow covered the mountains like a set of beautiful white roots sparkling underneath the blue sky. I had been to a lot of places, but nowhere else could I see colors like that. Confirming that the scenery hadn't changed over the years, I drew away from the railing and found a bench to sit down on further back. This time, I simply took in the scenery over the heads of the other tourists. Eventually, a group came in through the door and completely blocked my field of view. A guide began introducing the mountain, talking over gasps of awe from the newcomers. I closed my eyes, forming the scenery of the mountain in my mind, as well as myself sitting next to my friend. Unable to find the words to express myself, I simply shifted my eyes from one corner of the breathtaking scenery to the other. She was better with words than me, so I gave up on coming up with something to do the scenery justice, and instead waited for her to say something. However, as unusual as that was, she remained silent as well. Instead, she seemed to be too taken in by the scenery to talk. The mountains were indeed amazing, but she was also gazing at the white plains extending below them. The guide's speech ended, and the lookout fell silent as the group left. Only a few families that didn't seem to belong to any group still lingered around. "You're not going to join the walk down, young lady?" asked a man that had unexpectedly sat down beside me a bit earlier. I was in my late 20s, so I looked around to confirm whether he wasn't addressing someone else. But there was no one else around me, so I nodded. At a closer look, the man looked like he was in his 50s or 60s. His thick, naked wrists peeking out from under his coat indicated that he either did sports or worked in the fields. Both required a bit of physical strength. "The scenery is amazing down there. You almost wouldn't believe it's Japan." "What about you? Are you not going?" I didn't have much experience speaking to someone in his age group, which made me somewhat hesitant. Nonetheless, I ended up responding to him anyway. "I ran out of breath, so I decided to take a break here. Besides, I've already been there like 100 times. The man looked at me. "You don't look to be part of the tour. Are you traveling alone?" I wore weathered clothes that favored mobility over style, and had a large backpack on my shoulders. I must have looked like a wilderness camper, truth be told. "You could say that." "How long have you been traveling?" "About half a year now." "That's nice," said the man. He then went on, "It's best to travel while you're still young." "Do you have a goal of some sort?" Do you have a goal of some sort? I mulled over his question a bit. I began my trip because I thought it would help me understand why my friend had lost all of her memories of me. It was prompted by my trip to a zoo half a year ago. That day, I felt I saw a side of her I'd never known before, and I felt like I could find out even more if I retraced our shared steps. It was hard to explain in concrete terms, though. I thought about it some more on my train ride home, but I couldn't come up with anything in the end. Then I figured I'd get off at the same station we used to in the past. I guess I don't really have much of a goal. I just got a long break from work, so I gave him one side of the story. The man continued to ask me questions for some time. I told him about the route that led me here, and mentioned a few things that happened along the way. As we ran out of things to discuss and fell silent, the man glanced at the clock. "Would you like to read a book?" Would you like to read a book? I reached into my backpack and took out a paperback novel I had been reading on the bus. "I don't care much for books. They're all just a pack of lies anyway." He shifted his gaze to the dam at the bottom of the mountain range. "Back when I was a youngin', we didn't have electricity here. The small villages all had diesel plants, but they kept failing all the time. So when I was in elementary school, I had my teacher tell me all about how their engines worked. They weren't all that complicated, but without any knowledge, even the easiest fix would be a huge hurdle, let me tell you. Are you a mechanic? No, I didn't become that. We didn't have electricity, but we were short on food too. So I worked in the fields and would go sell the extra yield to the neighboring villages. And well, I couldn't tell you how they learned about me knowing a thing or two about gizmos, but one day they asked me to fix a power plant. I see. He was telling me about a time long before I was born. I understood why he specialized in the sciences, but that didn't explain why he didn't like books. Could be just a generation gap. Well, all things have a reason, the man said. I couldn't tell whether he was talking about the fact he didn't like books, or if he had already returned to the issue of my trip not having a goal. Before I had the chance to confirm that, it was time for me to board my trolley bus. I said goodbye to the man and descended from the lookout. I returned to the bus stop in the wooden building and killed some time in the souvenir shop while waiting for the trolley bus to come. I spotted some cookies and chocolate named after the location. You could see those a lot at places like this. There were also some local character goods. I personally found the plushie of a snow chicken particularly cute. It was a bird whose feathers would turn white in winter. There was a big statue of it by the entrance, there were also some pictures of it for sale. I suddenly realized my friend was probably looking for this bird from the lookout. I didn't realize it back then, but it was quite obvious in retrospect, given how much of a bird lover she was. My trolley bus would soon arrive, so I moved over to the bus stop. I ended up not buying anything. I almost bought a tasty-looking batara, but then I remembered seeing it cheaper at the main station, which made me change my mind. I decided to buy it later so I could enjoy it in the comfort of my train compartment on my way back. I was the first person to board the bus. I took my seat and waited. This time I spotted some familiar faces among the people who boarded after me. Once the time came to leave and the other tourists had assembled, the guide made sure that everyone was present. After that, the bus rolled out of the station and towards its next destination. It was the highest waterfall in the country. Last time, she made the 30-minute trip up that perilous mountain path all by herself, just to reach the waterfall at the end of it. I had given up as soon as I saw the slope and waited for her at a nearby cafe. This time, I'd go where she went. I glanced at the neighboring seat. She looked out the window with narrowed eyes. "We should bring a pair of sunglasses next time," she remarked. Whew. That was a little heavy, wasn't it? But I think I'm going to leave this episode right here because it is well past the halfway point. So that is all. And if you liked it, please give it a big thumbs up down below. And if you haven't already subscribed, by subscribing, you're becoming part of a legacy. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next video.